Greetings, everybody. This is Patricia Cori coming to you from sunny Azores. It's a gorgeous summer day here, believe it or not, and I am in the bliss space that you always find me in. Well, not always, but I'm certainly today. And why wouldn't I be in bliss when today I can bring you someone who I admire so much, someone who I've followed so much, someone who is a true activist for planet Earth.
The Matrix is a green screen in your mind, imprinting programming to make you believe it's real. It's not. Break free. Join me, Patricia Cori, and my guests on Beyond the Matrix, where there is light, where you can dare to be free. Beyond the Matrix.
Before I tell you who she is, I'm going to read her bio, and you'll find out. Elected 6 times to the House from the state of Georgia, Cynthia McKinney cut a trail through congressional deceit like a hot ember through ash. Kudos to whoever wrote that. She discovered legislators who passed laws without reading them, party leaders who colluded across party lines against their constituents' interests, black-skinned individuals shilling for the white status quo. She excoriated government lassitude over Hurricane Katrina, uncovering dark secrets. She held the only critical congressional briefing on 9/11, introducing counter testimony of scholars, investigators, former intelligence agents. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, she held, wow, she held Rumsfeld to account for malfeasance by military contractors and missing billions, which are now trillions, in the Pentagon's budget. Then she hammered him on the reasons for the failure of NORAD air defenses on 9/11. Love it. She read truth into the congressional record, held town halls and hearings, led protests, showed up while others played along to get along, took the side of the people against the will of the party. And when she got too truth-seeking in speaking, the Republicans rigged the Democratic primaries to boot her out, leaving behind a trail of achievements, mostly won single-handedly as a result of her service on the House International Relations, House Agriculture, House Armed Services, and Budget Committees, and the Select Committee on Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. But McKinney rose again like a phoenix, answering the call to run as 2008 Green Party candidate for president, challenging the corrupt two-party stranglehold on American democracy. Then it was on to the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza to be seized on the high seas and imprisoned in Israel. On to Tripoli to serve as witness to the NATO terror bombing of Libya. On to Malaysia to serve as an official witness for the War Crimes Commission. And she's fighting still. May Reid, Corrigan Maguire, Nobel Peace Laureate in 1976, said of her, McKinney, an extremely realistic and well-informed person, unlike anyone in Washington or the media, remains confident that truth and justice will prevail. American and the Constitution will be safe the day Cynthia McKinney or a similar person is President of the United States. Her powerful books that you'll want to read if you want to know what it means to stand fearlessly in your truth are entitled There Ain't Nothing Like Freedom, The Illegal War on Libya, and my favorite, How the U.S. Creates Shithole Countries. My friend, I introduce you to the wonderful Cynthia McKinney.
My goodness. I wonder who wrote that, but I think I hear a little Paul Craig Roberts in there. I don't know about the entire thing, but I definitely, that last, the ending was definitely a la Paul Craig Roberts. So who wrote it?
I don't know. I picked it up off of Amazon and I said, this really speaks.
Really?
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, who wants a boring, factual
Yeah, yeah.
WikiLeaks bio, when you have something as beautiful as this, I was so thrilled to find it. So, and it certainly
Wow.
speaks
Well,
to the vastness of your personality and your chutzpah and power. I mean, lady, you rock.
or I rocked.
You do.
Make it all past tense.
No, never. You know, you're a beacon of truth and an inspiration. And today I asked you to come on because, well, at a moment like this, you know, it's really interesting to have the perspective of somebody who's been in the political system. You might not be in it completely now. We're going to be talking about that. But of course, I know that you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going down in America and the world. So I thought, you know, can we start by simply, okay, I read that beautiful bio, but you tell us, who is Cynthia McKinney?
Well, you know how that is. It's very difficult to say who you are when you're in the process of becoming. I can say I've done a lot of things. You've read those things that I've done. How that ends up being who I am, oh my gosh, I don't know. You can just say I'm a person who has ferreted out her values, truth, justice, peace, dignity, earth dignity, human dignity are the values that I try to keep in mind as I do what I do, whatever it is that I do, and whenever I do it. So I'm a person who was able to develop their values early on and hope to live by them.
And of all the causes, you know, you've been involved with, I mean, it's just, you know, it reads like a novel throughout your political life and as an activist. What is the greatest, I know that you're going to say, how can you pinpoint this, but can you even get close to identifying what the greatest mission is that you feel you're fulfilling on your journey?
Probably the greatest mission would be to serve others and do no harm. And then at the same time, to serve oneself. Because basically what I've done really all of my life is I've served others. And in serving others, I didn't serve myself. I didn't serve my family. I left out. I mean, there's a huge gap in that those wonderful words that you wrote that were written by someone other than me. I've also, in pursuit of those values, I've mistreated my family.
Well, that's a very revealing. That's a vulnerable statement. Are you making those changes now? Spending more time?
I'm trying to make up in many ways. So one, when my father died from the cancer treatment that he got, which was the treatment that killed him, it wasn't the cancer, because I took him to a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and the regular physician was nice enough to give me access to all of the latest studies, oncological studies dealing with natural remedies and herbs and traditional medicines. So basically what I did was I put all of that knowledge, that accumulated knowledge together, and then combined it with the prescription, the teas that came from traditional Chinese medicine, and the cancer did not spread, the tumor did not grow. But by that time, the damage had already been done to my dad with the chemicals, the synthetic medicines from Western medicine.
Yeah, after you start the treatments, the alternative just can't kick it. There's too much
That's
poison
right.
in.
Too much poison, that's right. And that's what happened with me. But of course, that set me on a different path where I just don't believe in anything that is in terms of Western medicine. You can't get me to take an aspirin. You can't, yeah, I'm just not there.
I hear that. I am an I mean, obviously, if even saying it these days on YouTube gets you in trouble,
That's right.
Can't even say anything about alternative medicine and you get yanked, but I do it anyway because if I get yanked, I get yanked. As long as I've got a voice, I'm going to use it. And I do
That's
not,
right.
I,
That's right.
won't even talk about vaccines.
That,
But
oh
I
gosh,
don't
yes.
take anything. This body is sacred and
That's right.
I'm healthy and I don't even take an aspirin. My attitude is body knows what to do. Just give it a moment to do it.
Give it a moment to do it. That's right.
Right.
And you know, when I was going through all of that with my dad, I made an observation about myself. It gave, you know, the many hours that I spent with him actually gave me a chance to look at what was present in my life and what was not present. So it was me, my mom, and my dad. But in the end, that's all it was, because I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a special friend. I did have friends who, you know, called me every day, looked in on me, made sure I was okay, but I didn't have like a husband, spouse, partner, that kind of thing. And that led me to think that I could love my fellow man in the general, but that it was very difficult for me to love in the particular. So that was the void in my life. I've done all of those things, and yet I've not. Yes, I did get married. I mean, you know, you go through certain things, but those are like phases in life. But then what actually is it that gives your life meaning and gives you the desire to wake up in the morning and set goals and try to accomplish those goals every day? You can be motivated by the outside world, but ultimately it comes down to having a partner to guide you through your inside world, your inner world. So that's what I'm focused on now, just trying to provide some balance, because if you name it, I've basically done it out there in the world. But what I've not done is have significant relationships. Even, you know, even though I have relationships with my elementary school former classmates, and, you know, we can call each other up on the phone and talk for a half an hour or an hour and catch up as if there were no time in between. But even that, you know, sort of, maybe that's what people, the ordinary that people are able to do. Well, I've not had the ordinary in my life, and I'm craving the ordinary now.
So what you're saying is I don't believe for a minute that you're not continuing to be an activist on some level.
Oh, that is, I mean, you know, one always has to be ready to accept the call if the call comes, and if the authentic revolution comes. I have always characterized myself as a revolutionary. Yes, I am a radical, but at the same time, what that means is that I'm not going to allow you to define me as left, right, center, whatever. And so the richness in not buying into predetermined labels that have been fitted for others, by others, is that you become free to experience the entire spectrum of humanity, which is something that I've done. And but you know what we're witnessing now, it's not a true revolution of revolutionaries. It's a revolution of those people who have always been able to take advantage of other people, the people that I fought all the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because, you know, we clearly are in a moment where I truly believe the semblance of democracy, let's call it the republic, whatever you perceive America to be at this time, is absolutely in the throes of a coup. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with it. It's not our revolution.
No.
And so, but how do you tell the masses of the sheeple out there? And, you know, I've never used language like that. The first time I heard that was when Cindy Sheehan referred to people as sheeple.
Way back.
Way back.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
remember.
And I've not used that terminology, but when you get, assuming, I mean, if you even acknowledge that there was built-in fraud, believe me, I know about election fraud. I've seen it, I've experienced it firsthand. And so the interesting thing is, you know, you're talking about vote flipping by the electronic voting machines. Well, Georgia was the first state to roll out the electronic voting machines, and I was the one against whom every vote flipped. So when it happens like that, it's not random. It's every vote flips against you. Then that's programming. That's not random. And so I think I have a little story to tell about that as well.
And one of the reasons why I contacted you, and thank you, I want everybody to know that Cynthia answered me in a couple of hours when I asked her to come on the show, which I thought spoke oceans about who she is. But obviously, one of the reasons I contacted you was because actually I saw that you had retweeted the wonderful Sidney Powell and her, talk about a woman of power, man. And she was talking about the watermarks on the ballots. And, you know, I'm seeing information starting to pour out. We've got the watermark information. We've got information about Project Hammer from another source. And I saw that you were involved in spreading that information. So if you can speak directly by experience of how they do that, because I believe that there's a multi-pronged attack on the votes electronically, the dumping of ballots, the 170-year-olds that are still voting. Can you speak to us of your experience? Because I look to you, I look to people who actually have experience rather than supposition or spreading the wishful thinking or rumors. You know firsthand.
Yes. Well, after the fiasco of the, what was it, the hanging chads and the dangling participles down in Florida in 2000, Congress passed a law, a bill that became the law that facilitated a shift in how people in the US went to the polls and voted. That meant that resulted in the introduction of electronic voting machines. Now, the electronic voting machines in and of themselves do not have to be insecure. Georgia was the first state to deploy these machines. We basically had ES&S and Diebold. We had also Sequoia, but Sequoia, if I'm remembering correctly now, this was a while ago, Sequoia was basically owned by ES&S. So you had 80% of the machines on which people in the United States voted owned by two families. And so it was really, really difficult. And then, of course, well, let's say they were privatized, and the Urosevich brothers owned a large share. They owned ES&S, and I believe Sequoia. And then the other one was Diebold. Georgia actually deployed Diebold. Now, it wasn't necessary to use these old systems because there were people who were inventing. Everyone saw what happened in 2000 with George W. Bush. And so you had people who were inventing new voting systems. One of those persons was Athan Gibbs. And I mentioned his name just this morning and in another forum, because he was an accountant. He wasn't a computer programmer, he was an accountant. And so he looked at voting as an accounting process. One that there was a need for security, there was a need for accountability, there was a need for privacy, and there was a need for redundancy so that should one part of the system fail, that the entire system wouldn't fail. And he innovated the kind of machine that did that. Well, Athan Gibbs was killed on his way either from or to home, he lived in Tennessee, by a truck that had been sitting idling for several minutes, and the truck just happened to take off at the time when it could ram into Athan Gibbs's car.
Wow.
The importance of Athan Gibbs is that here you had a completely independent person who had come up with a fail-safe system that assured all of the necessities of voting in the United States, and at the same time had built-in accountability. That's not the system that was ultimately deployed in Georgia. And I had Athan Gibbs come to Georgia, and I had invited Athan Gibbs to go to California, to go out to California with me to talk about this issue, because at one point I was really, along with the computer programmers that had brought the issue to me, I was the only one talking about it because Georgia was the only state that had these machines. Had Athan Gibbs gone out to California with me, there's a possibility that he might still be alive, because it was that weekend that
right, but they would have found the time if they wanted to get rid of him, right?
That's true, and which is why I will take this opportunity now to caution Sidney Powell to just be very careful, because the stakes are so high. That is one courageous, she is wonderfully intelligent and courageous, all wrapped up in a single package, and she's taking on the big boys and she's winning. The problem though is you take on the big boys and there are repercussions, as I have experienced the repercussions. And the thing that makes me sad and gives me pause is that they go after you. It's not that you're the only one who suffers. In the end, it's your family that suffers. And so that's the part of standing up for principle and standing up for values and being there for everyone else, but it's your entire family that suffers.
Yeah.
So anyway, this whole matter of vote flipping, stuffing ballots, I reached out to a friend of mine who is Haitian American, and I know that the Democrats know very well about ballot stuffing, because that's exactly what they did in Haiti, and they were trying to do regime change. This is the Democratic Party inside the United States trying to do regime change in Haiti against the political party of Father Aristide, who was a priest, who left the priesthood, became the president of Haiti, and demanded reparations from France, because of course, you know, what happened with Haiti is that the Haitian people had to pay the French for their freedom because they defeated Napoleon's army, and the French in retribution made the Haitians pay for their freedom because France wasn't going to have the benefit of slaves any longer. And so, well, a similar situation happened in the United States as well, where the slave owners were compensated, but the slaves were not upon the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of the Civil War. So, I mean, this is sort of the MO that takes place, where people who have and want to exploit others will even continue to exploit others as they regroup in a temporary loss, because as it turns out, the defeat of Napoleon's army was a temporary defeat for France, but it was not a defeat for the European or the Western European empire of colonialism and neo-colonialism that still stands to this day. So I don't, I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is that we need to live these lives in a balanced way. And we also need to understand that you don't take on the big boys without some degree of risk. And when you do, you have to be ready to accept the risk. Now, you look at someone like Julian Assange, and that WikiLeaks was a platform that allowed people to take on the big boys in a way that they didn't have to suffer the repercussions of their actions, but in fact were exposing the actions of others that should have resulted in prosecutions and accusations of criminal behavior, war crimes, crimes against humanity on the part of certain individuals in the West. Didn't happen. And it still hasn't happened, despite the fact that we have sitting today a president who said, drain the swamp, but the swamp is still alive and well. And so if we are going to have a revolution, let it not be one that the swamp makes. But that's what I see happening now, and it's only going to get worse. So what are my plans? I've done about as much as can be done. And I'm hoping that people will. I just got chastised by a friend who said that I shouldn't be flippant about anything anymore, that young people have no sense of history and no appreciation of the struggles of others that came before them. And therefore, I have to be in a mode, because they think that I have reach into the young people of today, that I would be able to teach them. Well, it's hard to teach people who are, the deep state has ways of rewarding those who follow its path.
Yeah.
And ways of punishing those who don't. So, I even had 2 stalkers. Those stalkers were there to intimidate me, to people, I look out my window and I see a van load of people looking back at me from my window with cameras just filming me. And it's just everywhere I went, everything I did. And what you have to put up with that, what you have to put up when you're dealing with these people is so much that right now I just want to hike and have fun and live my life and hope that young people can learn from the lessons that I've learned and shared in my books. I've got another book out. My 2020 book is entitled When China Sneezes, and it's an analysis of the global political economic situation with coronavirus and SARS coronavirus 2. I'm hoping that people will learn and read and enjoy, and then fashion strategies that can help us to not become victims of, well, the deep state is one way to put it.
But what you're saying is contradictory. In one breath, you're saying, I'm just going to pull back and go hiking. And the next minute, you're writing a book about the most controversial matter of the day. So, right? And its implications on a global level. So I'm not buying for a minute that you're pulling out of the arena of truth and light bearing because you're still doing it. But it's obviously coming through that I don't want to say there's fear here, but there's acceptance, if you will, that battling this system is not for the weak of heart.
That's correct. That's correct. That there's more to it than meets the eye. So, we will see as the situation unfolds, we'll see what we have to look forward to and what we need to try and fight. There's a lot that needs to be fought, and there's some things that we can look forward to, but I won't be a part of the leadership of that.
So, can you speak to that? I mean, how do you perceive? I'm not in the country, joyfully, I might add. So I'm not watching, and I'm deliberately not watching the celebrations and all the drama that's unfolding at the moment. But needless to say, I'm paying a lot of attention to the backstory, Sydney's information, more information about Hammer and how the machinery works to change the ballots. And, do you have a pulse on how this is going to flip?
Well, what I see happening is that the Democrats made their play, and their play involved massive theft. I've had it done to me, so I know what's possible in terms of those machines. I've watched it done to other countries, like I used Haiti as the example of the ballot stuffing, where the United States printed. They shipped ballots to Haiti to be used, and among those ballots was just blank paper, and they were counting the blank paper even.
No way.
Yeah, just really outrageous kind of stuff. So we know the tricks that can be used, and in fact, we know the tricks that were used. Now, were there some counter tricks going on? Well, it turns out that President Trump created an organization an agency actually called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's a standalone agency created in November of 2018. And one of the charges of this organization is the securing of ballots. Now, this is very interesting because I don't think anybody really knew about this. So when Steve Pachinik came on Twitter, I think he actually went on the Alex Jones show or whatever, and said that there were watermarks on the ballots. Well, everybody was like, what is this? What's going on here? And it turns out that according to this agency, yes, there are watermarks on the paper ballots.
Okay, so let me just ask you a question here. So the counter reply to this information, because I watched the interview and I've been sharing that information, is that's ridiculous. The ballots are printed by states. There's no central ballot printing. And so it's just a rumor, it's not true, et cetera. And yet we've got some pretty heavyweight people coming out and saying this is true. So can you answer the question of that? How could they do this if the ballots are printed in individual states?
If you go to the website of this cybersecurity agency and read, as I have done, so that I would know what this agency and its leadership have to say, basically, the agency leadership state that they coordinated the styling of the ballots with the states. This agency is a part of Department of Homeland Security. And so therefore, and I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but every state has an aspect of Homeland Security in it.
Okay.
And so Homeland Security could coordinate with the Secretary of State of every state. The Secretary of State of every state has jurisdiction over elections.
Okay.
So there's a way that this could have been done.
Wow.
And in fact, if you go to the agency's website, what does it say? And this is what I tweeted out. It says most of the ballots have a code and some of the ballots have a watermark.
Okay.
So this is it's CSIA, I believe, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure, CI.
Okay, hold on. Cybersecurity, infrastructure security?
Agency. That's right. CISA.
Okay.
.gov.
Okay.
And so now the .gov immediately tells us that it's a government agency.
So you think that this is a valid, I mean, when Sydney said it, I thought, well, this is not a person who is going to be sharing rumors.
Right, exactly. Because, I mean, you know, when she files her, now we all are waiting with bated breath for tomorrow when the documents are filed in court on behalf of the Trump campaign.
Are you talking about
Because
Pennsylvania?
then they will let us know what they have. It's either put up or shut up.
Yes, it
And
is.
tomorrow is the day. And so they're going, you know, we'll see what they have in terms of evidence.
But are they
And
just
of course,
filing, are they filing against Pennsylvania or more states?
I think they're filing, at least it's my understanding that they will be filing against a lot of states. Because you see, and then of course, a matter that was brought up that I haven't looked up myself personally, but it's my understanding that Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein own shares in the vote counting company.
Get out of my face.
That's what I heard on Maria Bartiromo's show this morning. So I can look it up right quick, but I'm not surprised.
No, I'm not either.
So here we got tied to the Clintons, voting system used in battlegrounds tied to Clintons and Pelosi. Dominion voting system has ties to prominent Democrats, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Bill and Hillary Clinton. This is being reported by, let me see, what do they say? It's something here about Bloomberg. So now what are they saying about Bloomberg? But anyway, it's here, John Poulos, CEO, this is funny, confirmed that the machines Dominion manufacturers include components from China, and no issue with foreign suppliers isn't unique to the voting equipment industry. I mean, you mean to tell me that the United States cannot produce a voting machine that has integrity and allows U.S. voters to cast their vote? But then you have to go to the philosophy of the Democratic Party today, which says that none U.S. citizens should be allowed to vote in U.S. elections.
That's right.
So they wouldn't care. They wouldn't care if citizens only were voting or citizens and non-resident aliens were voting. They wouldn't care.
Well, no, because you mentioned the word integrity and voting in the same sentence, and it doesn't seem like we've had that ever, or certainly not in the
That's
imaginable past.
That's right. That's right. So now, and I'll tell you something, because I was there with Ethan Gibbs. Ethan Gibbs was on his way to Ohio. Remember, Ohio in 2000 was the battleground for George W. Bush, and one of the battlegrounds, because also Florida. But Ohio, the Green Party had filed lawsuits, and so Ohio was going to change after Georgia did. Ohio was going to change its voting system. Ethan Gibbs was on his way to testify in Ohio, and he was killed. He never got to Ohio. So you see, this is not something that is beyond, it's not science fiction. It's not even fiction. This is science fact that elections can be stolen by way of the voting equipment. And what happened in Georgia, and we've got Bev Harris, who has studied this long and hard. She came down to Georgia for every one of my elections because I was always under the gun of black box voting. Bev Harris of Black Box Voting, who has studied this issue. I went to Florida with her when she demonstrated that you could easily hack into the, I think at that time we were using Florida was using ES&S. You could hack into the ES&S system, you could hack into the Diebold system. And when my constituents filed a lawsuit against the state of Georgia so that we could get access to the election data, the state of Georgia went to court and argued, one, that the software, the Diebold software was proprietary, meaning that it was owned by Diebold, and so therefore the state of Georgia didn't have the authority to release it. And two, that after an election is called, that the voters just, this is a quote, just have to trust that the person who is announced the winner is the actual winner. Now that's what they testified to in court.
Unbelievable. So now you have a situation where you've got a multi-pronged fraud. Like I said, you've got the ballot, the ballots, the printed fake ballots. Theoretically, I better be careful when I say that. The alleged fake ballots, the alleged altered electronic ballots, ballots from people who are deceased. So it's a multi-pronged problem here. I'd love to know what you think is going to happen. I know that asking you to make that supposition is a little silly, but I'm asking anyway.
Well, the idea that all of the states are using the same software throws up a red flag for me, because I saw what happened with Athan Gibbs. I saw the process that was used in the state of Georgia, where legitimate, authentic, accountable systems were shunted aside in favor of companies that hired the relatives of the decision makers, if you understand what I'm saying.
I gotcha.
And then those were the systems that were deployed in the state of Georgia. And I would assume that that was the way purchasing decisions were made all throughout the country. And that's why you have so many of them using this dominion, and they would have juice behind them if their shareholders are indeed Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. They would have juice behind them.
So what does that mean?
What that means is that Athan Gibbs is dead, and the state of Georgia ended up buying a system that was hackable, that they knew was hackable, and that was never secure. And then when they replaced that system with another system, they did the same thing. That's what that means.
So you said tomorrow is show and tell time. What happens if they do come out and say they have proof? Because let me backtrack. I heard Giuliani talking about we're going to sue Pennsylvania and we want to see those ballots. But I just find it a little bit naive to think that they're going to just hand over the ballots if they are false ballots. I mean, I don't get how that could be handled in true justice, but I'm curious about what you think will happen if in fact they can identify that these hundreds of thousands of ballots are not watermarked.
Well, there are ways that you can determine, say, for example, if the same ink was used, the same paper, the same handwriting on the paper. So you can sort of determine that this was a mass operation. These were not single individual distinct voters that were signing and completing these ballots. Each ballot would have to undergo a forensic analysis. We will be able to tell what the remedy is from the court filings. In some cases, like in Georgia, I had to have elections overturned because the fraud was so rampant in my district that these were non-congressional seats, these were local seats, but nonetheless, I made the appeal to Department of Justice. Department of Justice overturned the elections because the violations were so flagrant. So it depends on what the remedy is that is requested by the Trump campaign. They could say, eliminate those ballots. So you've got several compounded issues here, because election day is election day, not 2 weeks after election day or 9 days after election day. And so you've got those ballots that arrive. It's my understanding that the post office is still processing ballots. They're still delivering ballots. One of the things that we know happened in 2016, and this is a sad situation, that it seems to always happen in the Black communities, in the Black precincts, is that the ballot stuffing took place in the Black precincts. We know that because when there was a recount that was done, asked for, which I didn't agree with, asked for by the Green Party under the presumption of the Russia hoax thing. But what the Detroit recount showed us was that Hillary's numbers went down, and they went down by a substantial amount, and that ballot stuffing had taken place in Detroit. In fact, what ended up happening is that you had 2 elections clerks that lost their jobs behind one in Michigan, the other one was in Florida, because of the rampant corruption that took place. And because the Black community votes 90% with the Democratic Party, it's easy to stuff in those majority Black precincts. And that's what was done in 2016, but it was exposed by those recounts. And I would suspect that you'll see some exposure of that again in a recount. And the fact that you do have this watermark situation and the coding situation, the codes and the watermarks on some of these most of the ballots have one or the other. It should be a very interesting season. So the bottom line is that we do not have a president-elect, and I don't know who gave the media the idea to characterize Joe Biden as the president-elect. That is something that is happening totally on their own. This is something that they're doing in conjunction with their propaganda masters.
And I mean, it's like there's no holds barred anymore. Even Fox has sold out to the great dark lord. So, you know, the media machinery, I mean, there's maybe a few little semblances of alternative media, but by and large, it's all sold out.
Well, the bottom line is that I tried to warn people about 25 years ago that something was terribly wrong, and those things that were terribly wrong with the U.S. polity were being manifested in my ordeal to serve the people of Georgia. The sad thing is that at that time, 25 years ago, very few people believed me, and most people, you know, the media ridiculed me. That's one of the forms of soft repression.
I remember that.
And the interesting thing is today, I get emails, I get messages from Twitter and Facebook from people all the time saying, you know, I really believe the media about you back then. But now I know you're a real patriot, but it's 25 years too late.
Yeah, and not only that, but when, you know, we've still got the huge numbers of sleepers buying. I find it insane that anyone can look at the candidate and talk about what a great man he is. I'm talking about Biden, of course, and what a visionary he is. It's just insane that they're buying. I'm convinced that there's some kind of serious mind control going on. It's coming through the television set.
Well, there's no way. I mean, you know, my mother is particularly incensed because she knows how hard I worked every day to represent my constituents in my state and my country. And then she knows that there was not a single election ever when I didn't have opposition and I had to campaign because I had moneyed interests against me every time. And yet, for the highest office in the land, there's no campaign. And you've got a candidate who can't put 3 sentences together, and everyone knows that this candidate is demented, feeble, incomprehensible, and at the same time, and incoherent, and at the same time, millions of people go and vote for that. There's something either terribly wrong with the electorate. We already know that there's something terribly wrong with the administration of elections in the United States. We know that from my own personal experiences. And then they've been manifested here at probably 1,000 times magnification, sort of like a PCR test for COVID-19. You know, if you amplify it enough, you can see everything, but maybe not the thing that you're looking for, which is justice. Can't find that.
Not going to find that in the swamp. So, you know, yeah, I watched this feeble man. Of course, it's so evident to anybody with even a few synapses still working that it's all preparing for Harris to move into the seat.
Yes.
And, you know, how convenient. Joe gets moved out quickly and
Yes.
she gets moved in. And I have a feeling we're going to be looking at Michelle Obama to be put in the vice president seat.
It could be that, or it could really be anything, because you've had a coalition, co-aligning, I guess, of establishment Republicans and Democrats. So they've come together. They came together against me. They said that I could not become the face of the Democratic Party in Georgia. And then Democrats and Republicans worked together. I said in my concession speech, I said the Republicans wanted to beat me more than the Democrats wanted to keep me. Democrats didn't want to keep me at all. And so when Sydney says on national television that this vote flipping technology has been utilized by Democrats against Democrats, she's absolutely right on that. And I can raise my hand and say, yeah, it happened with me. And we filed a lawsuit. We've got affidavits. We know we've got, what we didn't have was the money to prosecute the case. We didn't have money.
What do you mean that she said Democrats against Democrats? You lost me.
Sydney this morning on Maria Bartiromo's show said that this vote flipping technology had been used by Democrats against Democrats
in the previous election.
I'm a point in example.
You mean in the previous elections?
In previous elections, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the General McKinnon, I can't remember his exact name. I think it's General McKinnon. McInerney, thank you.
Yeah.
Of course you would know. He's really come out and stated that this is fact, and he's talking about Hammer, and he also said that Obama and Biden knew, and quote, all about it, and used it in the previous election.
Well, now, according to, I think it was him, but I'm not sure. It might have been another person who said that it was used on behalf of Obama.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Against Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
So it was used back in 2012.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. He said that, and he said, but he specifically said Obama and Biden know all about it, with the big emphasis on all about it.
Yeah,
So it's like, oh my God. So what do you think is going to be announced tomorrow? What's your gut? Think they've got it? They got the proof? This is the sting that we're all hoping for?
It would be wonderful if the sting part were true, but we've got proof of or evidence, I should say, of Hillary Clinton's crimes as Secretary of State. And that no matter how many times people chanted, lock her up, nothing happened. We've got evidence of the criminal behavior of the Clinton Foundation. Nothing happened. So my idea that we'll actually get to justice, no, I don't think so. Which is why I need to go, I just want to go hiking and do things that are important to me, find friends, spend time with my friends, tell them how much I care about them, and show that, try to develop that spirit of loving in the particular, since to develop some balance, because I haven't seen any justice. Wow. And I don't expect to see any justice, even if Trump is able to demonstrate that there was enough interference that would significantly change the outcome of the election, which is that's the standard that he's got to reach in the courts. Well, Sidney Powell is a sitting example of someone who wins in court and can't taste the victory, because Judge Sullivan still will not let General Flynn go. And and I was not a fan of General Flynn after he wrote the book with Michael Ledeen of the faked intelligence leading to the Iraq War history. So, but what happened with the whole Flynn scenario and Operation Crossfire Hurricane, it was not even new. For those of us who have studied COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program of the US government against activists back in the day, back in the 1960s, when it was my generation of people that almost had an authentic revolution.
You're talking my generation too.
Okay, we almost did it.
Yes, we did.
And it was because we came so close to having an authentic revolution that now they want to put these fake revolutionaries in front of us.
Yeah.
And the state at that time resorted to murder. And it was because the state resorted to murder that we need to understand that these deep state operatives will go to any length in order to prevail, and that there has been a war against the authentic values of the people of the United States, at least since that time.
So I'm not going to say it's a pessimistic projection you're painting, but it certainly lends one to ask, okay, then what do you think it looks like if Trump is not able to get justice? What does the future look like for the Republic of America?
Well, we better get ready to join New Zealand and Australia and what's happening in the UK and Europe now with these second lockdowns. So, lockstep, dark winter. Joe Biden talked about we're going to have a dark winter, and he only said that because he had heard it.
What does dark winter? I've heard that it has an implication in military and intel terms. What does it stand for?
Well, in terms of the gaming that has been done around pandemics, it means that there's going to be a devastating pandemic that will result in, all the things that people have been afraid of: martial law, suspension of the Constitution.
Which is hanging on for a thread as it is.
Which is hanging on to a thread as it is now, yes. So when Biden uses that particular terminology, it means something terrible, because that comes straight from the Rockefeller Foundation and, all of the bad actors of the past. Gates Foundation, which is a bad actor of today. So forced lockdown, authoritarianism, mandatory vaccines, it's definitely going to be a very, very sad chapter in the U.S. if we go that route.
And of course, it's global. It's not just the US. I'm over here in Portugal, and we all understand. Well, we don't all understand, but I understand that it's all coming out of the UN, and Gates is a big player, and EEC has its mandates, and the systemic imposition of these tier 1, 2, 3 in England, and these draconian measures here. It's sort of moderate. And, I wonder, will we ever step out of this?
No, because this is the design. It is to utilize a health emergency to subvert constitutions around the world. Now, of course, this was done in Europe a long time ago without a health emergency, because it was done by the European community. I was in Italy at the time. My son went to high school in Italy. So I was there when they joined the euro and, were forced to leave the lira behind. And I wasn't in Ireland, but I was with the Irish when they were also debating this issue, and I think it failed in Ireland the first time, so they had to have a second vote. So they did have a second vote, and then Ireland joined and was given money as a reward for joining. But basically what you have in the European community is a group of people who have names and faces, but you don't know them. And they're the ones who are in ultimate control of some 300 million people. So it's a consolidation of power for some, while the many, for the 1%, while the many were led to believe that it would make things better for them, and it didn't. And that's why you see so many, you had the Grexit, the Brexit, the Frexit. I went to France and protested with the yellow vests, and the most poignant of the writing on one of the yellow vests was Frexit. And that's and they knew that that's what the yellow vests were all about. And they're talking about direct democracy. And so we have the opportunity to go one way, which would be toward direct democracy, or we can go the other way, the opposite direction, which is no democracy at all. And it seems that is the way in which we're going, is no democracy, because the only other way we can go and preserve our sovereignty is to go toward direct democracy, and it's not happening. The country that had direct democracy and that was leading the way toward an innovative political structure, political system, was Libya.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
of course, we
We
know
took
what
care of
happened.
that, didn't we?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Libya, people are so so uninformed about all the wonderful things that took place in Libya, not to mention that it was a heritage site for so much of its beauty.
That's right.
Back in the day, I was working with journalists in Italy, and I asked them, I had a PR firm at the time, and I
Mhm.
asked many of them, what was their favorite place in the world? And almost all of them said Libya. I said, Libya.
Right.
And they said, you been there? I go, no, I can't even go there as an American. And it was
Yeah.
like, oh, Patricia, Libya is a beautiful place. I thought, wow.
Yeah. Well, I did have the opportunity to go there. Unfortunately, it was underneath Barack Obama's bombs. But I went to the natural heritage site of the Roman ruins,
Mhm.
and you would have thought you were in the middle of Rome.
Wow.
Um, just stunning. So we've already lost so much. And the thing about it, the thing that makes me somber is that there wasn't a day that I arose when I was in the Congress for the entire 12 years that I was there, that I didn't have the people first and foremost in my mind. And yet it's those very same people who didn't even know that I existed. They didn't even know I was fighting for them. Many of them right here in Georgia. And many of those people were happy, thought they had achieved something when they got rid of me. So, I can't help but be somber when I see what's happening, and I say, okay, I was there. I've read thousands of pages of the COINTELPRO papers. Operation Hurricane Crossfire is nothing. At least nobody's dead compared to COINTELPRO.
Oh, my dear Cynthia, let us hope that some semblance of sanity rules.
Yeah.
And, I take from Star Trek all the time,
Yes.
where I find solace in the wisdom of Star Trek and the
That's
wonderful one-liner that they ask Kirk, how did he beat the Kobayashi Maru experiment that
right.
nobody had ever beat? And he said, I don't believe in no-win scenario, which is one of my mottos in life. But it's
Yes.
sure looking like show and tell time here.
It
And
is
this
show and tell time.
big time.
And
I
it's
mean,
going
this
to
is a
take a
big
whole
one.
lot for us to dig ourselves out from this. I wonder about the people who are standing on the sidelines or even cheering the wrong side right now. I just wonder, you know, what's our future when we have so many of them
Yep.
and so few of us. So I guess I'll close by saying that the scenario that I can envision is the Matrix. And so some of us have taken that red pill, and we're doing everything we can to live our lives with the red pill in the real world,
Yeah.
while the rest of them have made themselves irrelevant because they've taken the blue pill and they're living in a world that is a shambles.
Funny how blue and red have taken on such meaning as well. All right.
That's right.
Well, I guess we should
You
close
could,
here. Hmm?
one of the things that you could do is for your readers or for your listeners is to share. I wrote a paper a couple of years back called Purple Revolution, where I discuss all of this. And it would be great if you could share it in the show notes. I'll
I
send you
will.
the link.
Send me the link. Send me any links that I can share with the audience so that they know how to reach you and to get your books. And you said you've written, give us the title of the new book, please.
The new book is entitled, let me find it.
When China Sneezes, what, or
When
hiccups?
China Sneezes, From the Coronavirus Lockdown to the Global Political Economic Crisis.
This is a woman who says
Published.
she's taken the rest of her life off, everybody. Cynthia, it has been a real privilege to talk to you. I really, I think you understand from my comments that I've been aware of you for a very long time. In fact, I was supposed to speak at an event where you were speaking in Denver years ago and couldn't make it. Always regretted that. So thank you for opening the door. And I hope you'll come back on after this. I hope we're going to get
Yes,
a better answer than the dark scenario, and that
yes,
we'll be
'cause we
able to
don't
get
need,
together again and talk about that.
that's right. We don't need a dark winter. So yes, I look forward to coming back and by video too. But right now it's just,
Yeah, that would be nice. By the way, everybody, thank you for being patient. Cynthia didn't feel like being on video this time, but next time we'll plan it better because she answered immediately and we said, let's do this immediately. So next time we'll have a little bit more time to plan it. And
yes.
who knows if we won't have a bottle of champagne ready. I
Whoa, now that would
believe,
be wonderful.
yeah, I don't believe in the no win scenario. And I'm holding tight to the possibility that we might see something really shift here because the alternative
Okay,
is too bad to consider.
that's right. That's right.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cynthia. I'm going to let you go because I know you're a
Okay.
busy, busy person and you've got hiking to do.
Okay, thank you so much, Patricia, and I look
Thank you.
forward to the next time.
Me too. Thank you. It's been wonderful. All right, everybody. You've been
Okay.
listening to Beyond the Matrix, the program that asks you to think outside the box. And I know that if you're listening to this program, you're a red pillar too. So a lot of gratitude to Cynthia for bringing her insights. I mean, there's a lot of information in here. I'll be sure to post those links to her. We're going to want to read some of her books. And most of all, we're going to really just tomorrow is a big day. Let us pray that they've got the stuff to do this. And Trump said, I knew the swamp was deep, but I didn't know it was this deep. He always manages to crack me up. So yeah, it's really deep, but I don't believe in the no-win scenario. So let's pray, huh? And I will talk to you soon. This has been a kind of an emotional interview for me. I've got a lot of thoughts to process and so much information, but I am very excited to hear continually that the watermark thesis has ground, has substance, and I'm going to be investigating CISA.gov, cybersecurity infrastructure security agency. So I'll make sure that that link is correct. I'll put that up for you too. Stay tuned. I have got some really more exciting, very knowledgeable people coming on the show. It's growing, and I'm committed more and more every day to doing this work. Love you guys. Take care. This is Patricia Cori signing in.